Our team of white collar advice has been working with defendants traversing the system since 2009. And as you know, the lion's share of people plead guilty. Even people who will maintain their innocence will plead guilty because the sentence will be short. And many can't endure the expense of a trial, let alone the consequences of going to trial and losing. I've also said we have had more than 100 people in our community go to trial, and there's only one person that has either prevailed or been convicted and had the judge throw out that conviction, and that's my good friend, Dr. Ron Effelbein. Doctor, welcome to our show. I'd like to hear about the initial trial, what happened, and then what's happening next. And welcome to the White Collar Advice community.
Thank you for having me. Nice to see you.
Mhm.
Um, it was by far the worst experience of my life. I went to trial because I did nothing wrong, and I wasn't going to let them push me around. And then also raising my right hand and saying that I did something to some judge that I didn't do is actually a crime. That's perjury. So I wasn't going to do that, sit there and commit perjury, and then still lose my medical license and still go to jail. So for me, the choice was very simple, and I decided to go to trial. Um, when the jury found me guilty, it was the worst day of my life. I've never done anything wrong. I didn't do anything wrong in this case, and thank God that the judge, a very courageous, the chief judge actually of the state of Maryland, who was my judge, courageous and smart man, was paying attention because he 3 months, almost 4 months later, issued a 93-page opinion, essentially just destroying the government's case and acquitting me of all charges and granting me a new trial in case the government appealed. So, I mean, that was miraculous, and I'm told that that kind of thing never really happened. So it was, the whole time I'm sitting there at this trial watching, like they have presented no evidence, like they have no case. How could they possibly find me guilty? And yet they did. And but there were jurors falling asleep. There was one juror looking at her iWatch, which she wasn't supposed to have, but she was playing on her iWatch. They weren't paying attention. And in my case, this was about healthcare fraud, and the intricacies of that stuff is fairly complicated, and you have to pay attention. And these people were just, a lot of them just weren't. And thank God the judge was, and thank God the judge took his job seriously.
What I'd like to do is offer you some praise because you came into our community well before you went to trial. And I have said to people, if you're going to trial, you're either insane or you're not guilty. Okay. And you said, Justin, I'm not insane. I'm rational. I'm a physician. I chose to go to medical school to help people. I'm very rational. And I know the odds might be against me, but I can't say I did something I didn't do. There's a great lesson for everyone watching this. If you're going through a government investigation, some people wait, install, and delay taking action. Hey, if I get convicted, I'll then begin to mitigate without recognizing the government's working full time with our tax dollars to advance their agenda. They don't stop. So, to Ron's credit, he said, even though I'm innocent, I know the odds are against me. So, well before a trial, he begins to mitigate. He spoke with me, I believe, at University of Southern California, my alma mater. He began volunteering with prison professors, which is now doing work in every BOP prison. So I admire him that he began to prepare for the worst case scenario if there was going to be an inevitable sentencing hearing. Now, you're convicted. The judge says, this is insane. That's a wrap. Bye bye. You begin to move on with your life. You think it's behind you. Then you get some difficult news. Can you walk us through what that news is?
Yeah, yeah. So in my case, I believe this whole case is really just a case of political retribution, and the Biden Department of Justice came after me for, in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion, political reasons. But regardless, the judge, who was an Obama appointee, by the way, saw through it and acquitted me. And then a few months before Donald Trump's about to be inaugurated, and at the absolute deadline of their potential to appeal, they filed an appeal. And literally weeks before Trump's inaugurated, as they're like packing up their offices, they appealed. And so now I'm facing a new trial in August of this year to go through this horrendous nightmare yet again.
So let's talk about some of the the tolls that follow this process. You had the initial expense of a trial, and I know lawyers, they ain't cheap. So you had that expense of a trial, correct?
I did, yeah, still
And
do, still paying it off.
and now you're telling me, even though the judge in a 93-page opinion appointed by Obama throws it out, you have to incur that same expense again?
Yes, sir. Probably even more this time.
You're not made of money, right? The
Yeah. Well, the
government has
government thinks
endless.
I am.
And that's part of the reason the government, they have unlimited resources and they can just wear you down, just wear you down. It's why so many innocent people plead guilty. And I have such courage for you for seeing this through. Talk about the emotional toll, besides the financial cost, the emotional toll of just having this be such a big part of your life for so long now.
Yeah, it's the first. I'm sure people that are listening to this, you've been through this or you're going through this or whatever, and my heart goes out to you. The first few months when you get this indictment, you're like, what the hell is this about? They don't give you any information. You have no idea what they're coming after you for. The indictment reads what it reads, but it's just a bunch of legalese. So you can't sleep, you can't eat, you just become a shell of yourself. And then and again, I just want to say, like, I did nothing wrong. Like, I was completely innocent. I understand if you had done something wrong and they catch you, and you could say to yourself, well, I tried, I got caught, whatever, tax evasion or whatever the case may be. That's a different story. But in this case, it came completely out of left field with no warning and really no investigation even. Um, and so it was horrible. I mean, I have four little children. My wife's a physician as well. Like, none of us could sleep. The only kid that was spared was my youngest, because he was 3 at the time, and we didn't tell him what was going on. He had no idea. But my middle daughter, she had to sleep with me for over a year. She couldn't leave my bed because she just couldn't sleep in her own bed, and I would sit there staring at the ceiling. All three of the other kids are straight A students. They're all well adjusted. They all had to go into therapy um, for the first time in their lives. And then we got this acquittal, and it was like the greatest day of my life. And all of a sudden, this weight that you're carrying around on your shoulders for a better part of 2 years just disappears. And I actually, for the first time in almost 3 years, got a full night's sleep that night. And then, of course, it comes back. Now it's back. And obviously, I'm in a better position than I was a couple of years ago, but it's still weighing on me constantly. I mean, look at my hair, right? I'm not that old, but I'm gray as can be. And it's like, this is just a very trying and difficult time. And it's the expense is one thing, and my lawyers, to their credit, have been incredibly magnanimous about it. And they basically said, look, we know you're innocent, you didn't do anything wrong, we're behind you, you owe us all this money, pay us when you can, what you can. And that's exactly what I've been doing. I pay them every month a little bit, and we've worked it out, and they didn't walk away, thank God. They've been great. um but yeah, it's horrific, it's horrible. And actually, interestingly, I found it very hard to get back into work. I couldn't work for 2 years. They didn't take my medical license, but the hospitals don't want to credential you because you got indicted on something even though you were acquitted. And then when I tried to get medical malpractice insurance, the insurance companies would say, well, you haven't practiced in 2 years, so we can't insure you. So actually, I did get back into the emergency room. I'm an ER doctor by trade, and I took a job actually as the medical director for a company that provides medical care for prisons and jails. So I drive around the state of Maryland, and I make sure that the inmates at these various county prisons and jails are getting well taken care of. And I find it is an incredibly rewarding job. And I find it, there but the grace of God go I kind of thing. It's like I could have been somebody like that. And I want to make sure that these people get well cared for. And I take a lot of pride in that. So it's been a real godsend to have this job.
Well, you touch on something. When people break the law, when I broke the law, for example, and pled guilty, it was hard. It was easier to go to prison because I did it. You can argue the length of the sentence and how long, but I clearly crossed the line and there should be consequences. So I have such sympathy for you that you're having to manage and deal with all of this when you haven't done anything wrong. I do want to talk about the support you're receiving online. I think it's admirable. We see these campaigns building about this injustice and it's not fair and overreach of the United States government. How did that support online begin? And I'm going to link to it and profile it here when I do an edit of this video, but how did that start?
Yeah. So you know, I'm sure everybody in the community here, I'm sure you've got the same advice from your lawyers. Don't say a word to anybody, keep quiet, don't talk to anybody. Of course, the government's free to say whatever the hell they want, but you can't say anything. And I did that. I did that for two
Hold
and a
up.
half years.
They can lie too.
Yes, 100%. You are 100% correct. They can lie, and they can lie in the courtroom as well, which I found. I'm like, what the hell is this? How does this happen? But anyway, so I talked to, well, I read about somebody named Dr. Kirk Moore, who's a physician out in Utah. He's a plastic surgeon, and Literally a week into his trial, he got the charges dropped. A week into trial, the DOJ walked away from the case. So I cold called him and I said, "Hey, I'm a physician. You're a physician." He called me right back, and we had a long conversation. We've since become quite good friends. And I said, "What was your secret sauce? What did you do to make these people go away?" And he said, "The one thing I did was go public and be loud." And so I thought about it a lot. I talked to a couple other people, and I went to my attorney and I said, "I've made up my mind. Here's what I'm going to do. I know you're not going to like it, but this is what I'm going to do." And he said, "Give me a day or two to think about it." And I asked him for guardrails, like just tell me what I can't say so when I go on podcasts and stuff. And then we had another conversation about a day or two later, and he said, "You know what? I think it's a good idea." And I said, "What?" And he said, "You know what? You already had a trial. You testified in your own defense at trial, which again most people don't do, but I did." He said, "So what are you going to say that you haven't already said? Like there's no new information here, so go for it." So I started reaching out. I started just calling. And I went on X for the first time. I'd never been on X before, and I met up with some folks at a group called Weaponization Watch, which is an awesome organization. They look out for cases like this for where the government overreaches, and highly recommend people check them out. They're great. Cynthia Hughes runs that organization. She's a fantastic person, and it just sort of snowballed, and it's just getting bigger and bigger. And I just keep pushing it and pushing it, and I spend hours a day on X, like uploading things and talking to people, and I'm really just trying to get the word out there and do the best job that I can. It's almost like a full-time job now, advocating for myself, because I'm in the position now where I want to get the attention of someone in the Trump administration who actually can take a step back and be objective and look at this case and say, number one, is this a just prosecution? And number two, is this a good use of taxpayer dollars? Because they have two courts now that have already said that this is a bad case. So is this a good use of taxpayer dollars, or is this a malicious prosecution? And I think the Biden people were smart. I mean, they just said, "Look, before we leave office, we're going to get the ball rolling, and it's going to be very hard to stop it." And it's just one of thousands of cases that the DOJ has. And Pam Bondi's a busy woman, and Todd Blanche is a busy man, and you know, I got to get someone to say, "Hey, you really need to take a look at this and take a step back and be objective about it." I'm not asking for special treatment or favors. I'm just asking for someone to be objective and actually look at the facts. Because I think if you did that objectively, nobody would try this case.
The nice thing is there's some recent history of that advocacy we're getting to the president. So we worked with Keone Rodriguez. I know he's serving 60 months at Morgantown, but I did an interview with him and he talked about this similar advocacy campaign. Trump commented on it in the White House. He hasn't got the pardon yet. We hope it's coming, but that was all organic, building, sharing the story, which is why I'm so grateful for the platform that I have to distribute it. One, I think it's very inspirational to people in our community that you actually took it to trial, because we both know how many innocent people plead guilty. And the fact that you
Yes.
took it to that level and actually prevailed is very inspiring. But I think it is so sad you're having to go through this again. So as we wrap up this interview, as of now, did the government even offer you a chance to accept, say, hey, take a plea, we'll move past this, give you a short sweetheart deal, and let's just everyone can move on?
Well, um, supposedly something is in the works, but I can't really comment on that. I don't really know.
Okay.
I personally have not spoken to anybody. Um, we've had some conversations with some folks higher up in the DOJ but I don't know where those have gone. I want to mention something, Justin, that I find just completely will blow your mind. And I can send you the pictures.
Yeah.
About a month ago, I live in Annapolis, Maryland, so I'm about 45 minutes from Washington. I get an invitation to go to the Department of Justice, the very same people who are trying to throw me in jail yet again, to go and speak at a roundtable discussion on weaponization of the Department of Justice.
Mhm.
Now, you just cannot make this stuff up, right? I mean, it's so crazy and mind-boggling. And I get there, and I'm one of 20 people sitting around a table. The other people are all attorneys, except for one guy who's Rob Blagojevich, who was the former governor of Illinois, who Trump recently pardoned. And I guess he was there for the same reason, because he believes the government was weaponized against him. I don't know much about his case, but regardless, he and I were the only two non-practicing attorneys there. And we're sitting there, and I have a picture of me standing at the lectern, the big Department of Justice seal. I had a special badge. I had to get a background check, all this stuff to be able to go there. And they invited me. like you can't make this stuff up. It's the same people that are trying to ruin my life that invited me to come speak about weaponization of the very entity that's coming after me. Like it's crazy, but it just happened.
I don't know if crazy is a strong enough word. I don't have the skill
Yeah,
set to
it's like
actually.
dystopian. It's
I don't
like
have the
the
skill set.
Twilight
I've been
Zone.
my degree feels useless. I don't know what it is. Here's what I'd love to do. We're going to share this work. I'd love for you to offer advice. You know how many people come to the white collar advice community? Thousands of people every month, defendants, friends of the defendants, family members, and they're all seeking guidance. And this is a foreign world to them. Like you or me, we never imagined it would be our name versus the United States of America. And
Yeah.
some respond well. I responded terribly for more than 3 years before I went to prison until I met Michael and began to get my life on track. Offer some advice to the doctor, the lawyer, the mom, the dad who's watching this going through crisis.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that things will work themselves out. Be it you go to end up going to prison, whatever the case may be. It's not a death sentence. You're not dying. It's not like I just gave you, you're dying of cancer or something like that. That would be the worst possible news you can get. I think you got to, as hard as it is to accept, you have to put things into perspective. And I think that's what really helped me through all this. I kept thinking to myself, like, my life is over. I'm not going to, this or that. I'm not going to see my kids graduate. I'm not going to see this. I'm not going to see that. But you know what? At the end of the day, like, I still have my health. I still was okay. I still had a loving family. You always have to look at the positives and the people that are there for you and the people that advocate for you and that are behind you. It's very, very hard when you're in this situation. I know. I've been there. I get it. Like, I'm not a suicidal person, never been suicidal, but this situation was put me as close as I've ever been to that. But you have to just get through it and look past it. One thing I will tell you that helped me a tremendous amount physically was exercise
Mhm.
and sauna. I'm a member of the YMCA, and right around the corner from my house, I would go every single day. I would exercise like a fiend, and then I would get in the sauna for 45 minutes. And man, it helped me sleep. It helped me relax. Everything. It really, really, really helped. And there's a lot of data on it. So, as a physician, I would recommend if you're going through something like this and it's very stressful, exercise and sauna. They really, really helped me.
Last thing I'd say, you also, even though you know you were innocent, you began to prepare from that very first call with our team. You said, I'm going to somehow build a record or continue to build a record that shows I'm different than this ridiculous indictment. And you prepared if, God forbid, you did face a sentencing hearing. So that's something that I admire, and some people hire our team to do it. Some people are able to do it on their own, but you didn't delay preparing. That's something that I remember, and I think that's an important lesson for people watching. It's one thing to watch a video, Ron. It's another thing to say, okay, what's the next step? I'm not going to avoid a tough call with a lawyer or beginning to document who I am or what I've learned. I actually have to do it. And that's a takeaway for me and for people watching. You began to take action.
Absolutely. In fact, I even tried to. This was during the Gaza war when I was found guilty. Between when I was found guilty and when I was acquitted, and I even offered to the government. I said, "Look, to my lawyer, I said, I'm a licensed emergency room doctor. Like, they need hundreds of me over in Israel." I said, "I will volunteer to go over there. I'm not getting paid for this, but I'll volunteer to go over there and provide my services to people who are civilians, soldiers, whatever." And the government said no. But
I
but
remember
I
that.
yeah, but I mean, I was trying to do something good for people. I think that's the key. Do something, volunteer in your neighborhood, volunteer, whatever the case may be. Just, you have all this time, and make good use of it. And not only not only does it help your community, but it helps you. To your point, Justin, it does go a long way. And obviously, if you never volunteered before and all of a sudden you're volunteering, okay, that probably looks a little suspicious to the sentencing judge. But regardless, it's still, you're trying to do something. You have free time. You're trying to make better of yourself. It's never too early to start that. So, yes, to your point, absolutely, 100%. Try to do something for your community. Do something for somebody else in crisis. Do something for somebody else that can use your help. If you're an attorney, offer your legal services at the local library. If you're a doctor, try to volunteer at a medical clinic or volunteer at a soup kitchen, whatever the case may be. Just do something to help people that you can give back to your community.
I'll close. There was this great interview with Tiger Woods where he won a big tournament, and a student was interviewing him and said, "How did you do it? How did you perform so well today?" And he said, "Well, I started doing this 30 years ago. You're a physician. You get good grades in junior high and then high school, and you go to college and then medical school. The earlier you began to prepare and build, the better things. It's no different with a government investigation. The earlier you can start to prepare and overcome so many of these injustices, things said about you that are not true, totally one-sided, endless resources to advance their agenda. Don't delay. They didn't delay indicting you. You didn't delay hiring a lawyer or getting fired or losing your license, getting debanked, having a DOJ press release. So it wasn't too early for all of those consequences. It is not too early for you to begin to prepare. Ron, I'm super grateful for your time. Perhaps we can do another follow up as you get closer to trial, or as hopefully you get some really positive updates in your case. Namely, they have finally thrown this thing out and you can move on with your life.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I hope so.
I
Thank
hope
you.
so too. Thank you again.